Valentine. Valentine is the first major town encountered in the story and represents a classic late 19th century cattle frontier settlement. It sits in the heartlands of New Hanover and functions as a transportation and livestock hub. Valentine's economy revolves around cattle auctions and livestock trade. Ranchers drive herds into town to buy and sell animals, and the entire settlement exists to support that system. The muddy roads, wooden storefronts, saloons, hotel, sheriff's office, and train station reflect the architecture and infrastructure of rapidly expanding western boomtowns. The buildings are practical rather than decorative, built quickly to accommodate growth. The presence of constant construction throughout the story reflects how frontier towns expanded in real time. Historically, Valentine closely parallels Cheyenne, Wyoming. Cheyenne became a major transportation and livestock center during westward expansion because of the Union Pacific Railroad. Like Valentine, it began as a rough frontier settlement centered on cattle trade and rail access. Over time, Cheyenne evolved into a permanent and structured city. Valentine mirrors that early growth phase, rough, economically driven, and defined by cattle and rail infrastructure. Annesburg. Annesburg represents the industrial mining town of late 19th century America. It is a coal company town controlled by industrial magnate Leviticus Cornwall, who owns the local mine through Cornwall Kerosene and Tar. The town exists solely to extract coal and support the mining operation. Company towns were settlements built and owned by corporations near industrial sites. Workers lived in company housing and relied on company-controlled stores and services. In theory, this provided stability. In practice, it often resulted in exploitation when workers were underpaid, overworked, and subjected to dangerous conditions. Mining accidents, pollution, cramped housing, and long-term health consequences were common. Annesburg reflects these realities through its bleak atmosphere, minimal infrastructure, and industrial dominance. The town draws loose inspiration from real coal towns such as Pittsburgh, California, which was operated by the Black Diamond Coal Company. That town functioned as a typical company settlement where the corporation influenced housing, business, and local authority. When coal production declined, the town's importance diminished. Annesburg captures that dependence on a single industry and the fragility of such communities. Strawberry. Strawberry represents the frontier resort town. Unlike industrial or cattle settlements, it is designed as a scenic retreat. Located in Big Valley, it combines rustic log construction with attempts at refinement, targeting wealthy visitors from urban centers who want to experience nature without direct exposure to frontier violence. The town's architecture emphasizes wood, mountain views, and a curated image of the wilderness. It is not economically driven by heavy industry or agriculture, but by tourism. And this reflects a shift in the American West, where certain areas transitioned from survival-based economies to leisure destinations. Strawberry closely parallels Strawberry, California, a small Sierra Nevada town that emerged during the gold rush and later became a mountain resort stop. And as mining declined, tourism and scenic appeal became its defining features. The real town eventually dwindled in population, becoming small and quiet. The in-game Strawberry reflects that fragile balance between frontier ambition and eventual decline. Blackwater. Blackwater represents a transitional city between the old frontier and modern urban America. It began as a trading post and developed into an industrialized river port. Unlike Valentine, its streets are paved, buildings are brick, and infrastructure includes streetlights and organized urban planning. Its location on a major body of water allows it to function as a port city, facilitating trade and economic expansion. The presence of structured architecture and public services indicates modernization. Blackwater represents the civilizing force moving westward, capital investment, structured commerce, and urban planning replacing mud streets and wooden facades. The town mirrors Blackwater, Missouri, which was established as a river trading post in the late 19th century. The layout similarities between the real and fictional towns are striking when viewed from above. Additionally, Blackwater's cultural and economic significance resembles St. Louis, Missouri, which historically served as a gateway between eastern cities and the western frontier. Both cities function as transitional economic hubs, symbolizing the shift from frontier to organized civilization. Van Horn Trading Post. Van Horn represents a failed port settlement that descended into lawlessness. Originally intended as a commercial hub along the Lanahatchee River, it deteriorated into a crime-dominated dock town. Infrastructure such as the lighthouse and port facilities exist but are neglected, reflecting economic decline. The town is characterized by minimal law enforcement, widespread criminality, and social decay. This aligns with historical riverport districts that became infamous for gambling, brothels, and violence. The economic model of river transport created concentrated zones of transient populations, which often encouraged disorder. Van Horn closely parallels Natchez, Mississippi, specifically the Under the Hill district. That area sat below river bluffs where boats docked and became known for taverns, gambling halls, and brothels. It developed a reputation for violence and moral looseness. Van Horn captures that same historical dynamic, a port town shaped by trade, then overtaken by vice. St. Denis. St. Denis is the most developed and industrialized city in the game. It represents early 20th century urban America. The skyline includes factories producing smog, organized streetcar systems run through the city. The city is ethnically diverse, with residents speaking multiple languages including French, Spanish, Chinese, and Italian. This reflects immigration patterns of port cities during the late 19th century. Economically, St. Denis shifts away from cattle and frontier industries toward organized crime, urban politics, and industrial production. St. Denis is directly modeled after New Orleans. Architectural features such as above-ground cemeteries due to below-sea-level geography, streetcars, French Quarter-style buildings, ornate balconies, and specific one-to-one building recreations mirror New Orleans closely. Cultural references such as French naming conventions and Catholic symbolism reinforce this inspiration. The city recreates specific architectural landmarks and urban layouts that closely resemble historical New Orleans infrastructure and design. St. Denis functions as the endpoint of frontier evolution, where Valentine represents expansion and cattle trade, and Blackwater represents structured modernization. St. Denis represents full industrial urban society, dense, stratified, economically complex, and morally conflicted.